I'll never forget this. A piano popped in my head, like above my head. And it was just, and I said, piano.
Hello and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm thrilled as always to be here with you. I've just had the huge privilege of spending close to 2 hours with Mr. Neal Evans. Now, Neal Evans is one of those musicians that a lot of audience members love coming to see. So whether he's been part of Soulive, his incredibly prolific session work, solo work, and so on, Neal is an absolute force of nature and just has the most amazing playing style I know I've ever seen. And I'm so thrilled to be able to speak with him about all of this. So in part one of the episode, we cover off sort of what he's been up to the last 12 months, Soulive's new album that's coming out at the end of January, and a whole lot more. And then in part two, we go even deeper into Soulive, some of his session work with Jack White, and a whole lot more. It's really hard to overstate just how much Neal's done, and it was such a thrill to speak with him. But I'll let you jump into part one, and I'll see you at the start of part two. Neal, it's an absolute privilege and honour to have you on the show. So how are you doing this fine end of 2025?
Doing well. You know, I'm hoping for warmer weather. So, like, we're past the solstice. More light. That's all I need, man. More light and heat.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm sitting here in a T-shirt.
Dude,
that's the advantage of being down under.
I am also, just because the heat is, like, kicking into place, but...
Yeah.
Not like there.
No. So lovely to have you on, and we're really keen to dig into a whole bunch of stuff. But I thought we'd sort of cover off 2025 in the first instance, given the time we're recording it. So you've had another busy year. What were some highlights from this year for you?
I mean, it had to be cutting the new Soulive album. Really, it was my first time going to Iceland. Which was, it's kind of wild because Alan had been there 3 times prior to that recording, if not 4 times. And I would ask him, like, dude, what's it like? And he would be stumped for words. And he would literally just say, like, there's no words for the place.
Yeah.
And at that time, like, I didn't even know we would get to go to Floki and record there. And then when the opportunity came up, I mean, it was something else. Like, just getting there, flying into Reykjavik. We had a cool night in Reykjavik. And then there's basically a puddle jumper that takes you up. And then I think even from there, you have like a 2-hour drive. But the winds were so strong that when you try and fly up, or whatever way we're going, it is up, but or north, it's basically a 50-50 chance whether that flight goes off that day because of the winds on any given day. So we were postponing going to the airport. It's delayed. And I finally said to Wade, who runs Floki, and I said, let's drive. And I started, let's do the drive. And it was like a 6-hour drive just to get up there. Magical. And if anyone's listening and watching who's been there, they know I've never seen anything like this or experienced anything like Iceland.
And I'd probably take a sidestep there, Neal, because I'm fascinated by that. So for those that haven't been there, tell us about why you chose Iceland, and also tell us a bit about Floki, that for those of us unaware of it.
So there's the 11 Music is what is the label behind Floki, but also this incredible, I don't even know if I can call it resort. It's this high-end experiential place that you go to. And I mean, the hotel, it's like everything, the food, hotel, but also tele-skiing, like telemark skiing and canoeing, kayaking, just traversing the land. So it's basically this place where people can go and you have these kind of outdoor experiences. We were lucky enough to stay at Deplar, but this company also owns Floki Studios. So whether we were going to stay at Deplar, that was one thing, but we were there to record at Floki. And how that came about was my brother Alan had recorded 3 albums there, 2 of Oteil Burbridge and Mono Neon. So it was kind of wild. And never once did my brother say, oh, it'd be great if Soulive recorded here. That's not how Al rolls. That's not how we roll. It's like he was just psyched to have done it. just the one time, and then they asked him to come back. So they saw how he engineered. He was an incredible engineer. So they saw his workflow and they're like, you had to come back. But I guess at one point, Wade, who runs Floki, I guess that he contacted Alan and they asked us to come and do a show that we're doing January 30th in Colorado, which is put on by 11 Music. And Alan just kind of said, he was like, you know what would make sense is if we recorded an album and have it come out at the show. And Al just kind of threw that out there. And I guess, he was like, oh, let me get back. And they were like, yeah, let's do this. So that's how it all came about. And it makes sense for the kind of launch of it with 11 Music, doing this one show in Colorado. So that's how it all came about. And the place was magical. Like the studio is on the ocean. And when you pull up in the driveway, you get out and you're like on the gravel driveway and the ocean is literally just 10 feet away from you.
It's on the bucket list, Neal. I got to say, it's an amazing place.
And it's cool. Like, man, just go to their Instagram, check out Floki Studios, and you just see in the live room, there's just windows all around. And it's a rarity to be in a studio. Like for the most part, don't like music studios because they're all the same. Listen, they're full of like millions of dollars worth of gear. Cool. There's a lot of money in the place, but they're all the same. It's like, I've had stuff that sounds awful coming out of recording studios. I have stuff that sounds great. It's just a recording studio. Whatever happens there. But this place, just to be able to and the way we had ourselves set up in this triangle, there's Alan, I'm seeing to the right, Kras to the left. And either way, I was just looking out the window over beyond them the entire time we recorded. It was really, really special. The whole experience, everyone, Deplar, the entire place, the staff, every single thing there was beyond amazing. And I would just tell people, even like the days we spend in Reykjavik, my gosh, what a beautiful, beautiful city. Like if you can go to Iceland, go. And it's such a weird thing. These are places I never thought I'd go to in my life, go to Australia. If you can make it happen somehow, go there. And I really regret, we were supposed to have toured Australia years ago. And it was right after recording our No Place Like Soul album, which we were in the studio for over a month. Alan hadn't seen his family. And then it was basically the holidays. And we were supposed to tour Australia for a month. And leading up to, we were like, we just can't do it. And I wish, because we were going to go around the entire,
Yeah. Plenty of 6-hour drives there, Neal. Plenty of 6-hour drives there.
Yeah, but again, my wife was in Australia for a while, years ago. I just know how beautiful. I've great friends from Australia and oh man.
We'll get you down here.
Yeah.
So, Neal, that's probably a really good point at which to ask you about the new album. And particularly, Iceland's a very different location to record, let alone the amazing studios. So tell us a little bit about the new album. I know you've released 3 singles, and if my count's right, this is your 9th long player, and then you've obviously had some EPs and other stuff as well. So I don't
even know how many albums we
have. I did the count. So tell us about the process of recording it and what difference recording in Iceland made to what you ended up with.
Well, one thing that makes it real easy is basically Alan has recorded the majority of our albums. Alan's a great engineer. All of the gear they have there, it's it's his thing. The API board, he's an API guy, and just it's an amazing, amazing tracking studio. And he was already familiar with it. So that makes it that much easier. So we flew in day before Kras got there, and Al just goes in, we set up stuff. So everything was ready. Wade and Alan, we were there, and I was just kind of helping do whatever I could do, and everything was set up. And so already going into recording, Alan already knows what he wants to do and how he wants to capture it. And literally, he rolls with a couple pieces of gear. I'm talking about maybe a couple mics that he has, this DI box right here. The big, see, I'm gonna get to plug some stuff. By my boy Langston, if anyone wants an insane,
I like the look of it.
Yeah, DI. This is the big block. So check out Langston Massengill. So there you go. But Al rolls with just a couple of things, but he already knows the gear that's there, and it's pretty streamlined. It's the organ's there. like, man, like Krabs was playing out of a Princeton. It's like when it was just getting as classic as it gets. You got the Princeton set up, the kit, and going into it, Alan actually had like tunes. Al had some stuff, like he's been doing a lot of cool stuff with. We both have these Tascam 464 4 tracks, so he's been doing a lot of stuff with his 4 tracks. So he was just cutting like all these ideas. I didn't have any for this album, but I wrote a song. We did this a couple weeks of shows at the Blue Note in New York City. It was kind of funny. It was the first time we've ever played the Blue Note in the history, which was I think 3 years ago now or 2 years ago now. And the second year, leading up to the shows, I just kind of sit down and start shedding a little bit to get warmed up. And I came up with this song, East Side, which is the third single that came out. That I showed everyone it at the sound check. We played it that night. And that's something we've been playing like throughout, like last year and the couple of shows we did at the beginning of this year. So that was kind of a no-brainer to cut that. But even when we got to the studio, Alan's songs, like we'd sit down to play them, and there's just a natural thing that happens when the three of us play. Like if we listen back to his original song he cut, we'd probably be all sitting there laughing, like, yo, wait, that's because they just completely morph into something else, which is great because everyone's just open. There's just a difference now with Soulive. Like it's just effortless. It's just really easy when we get into a studio. It's like, man, I'm about to turn 50. Like it's just a difference of like when we were like 20, 21, 22, whatever, cutting songs, and you're in there trying to like work everything out and get to do this thing perfectly and come up with this concept for this album and this album. Man, we just go in there and we just cut music. And also I've noticed from all the production that the three of us do, and that we've done over the years, it's gotten to more of a, what does the song need?
Yeah.
You're not just sitting there cutting this and like trying to cut the perfect soul. Like all of a sudden, I'll be sitting there, I'd be in the room, one song, and I was sitting there with Al, and I was like, dude, man, there just needs to be a little guitar solo. And then Kras walks in the room. He's like, yo, I think there should be a little guitar solo right at the end. And we're just sitting there like, yo, so exactly what we, yep, go ahead. And it's just like, just hit it and quit it. Like, no, like, try and get the perfect part. It's just Kras will just cut something. You're like, that's perfect. No, let me do one more. I'm like, cool, dude, got it.
And so how has that changed over the years, Neal? As you said, maturity brings a lot of different approaches, and you sort of know each other so well. It sounds like you've not been a band that's had lots of, and I mean this in a positive way, not lots of creative arguments, but has it gotten even easier, or you still have some really good, solid creative debates about what a song needs?
It's easy. Probably years ago. I just remember when there were points when we were like, trying to do a specific thing on an album, or like if you were working with a singer, and it was like if you're just trying to force something, there's a difference. There never really was a lot of that, but I mean, for years, it's just easy. Like even when the three of us, like we won't play for months, and we just like, we have this show, we just get together, and it just hits, and it's just different now because it's not like the days of when you were touring all the time and you're exhausted and you're just going through the motions of playing, even though like you're playing at a high level from playing all the time. That's the one benefit of it. But now it's just when we get together, we just have fun, and you can just kind of put everything out there for those 1 or 2 nights, which is different than, touring all the time and you're like getting out of the bunk on the bus and you're just like, let's just go up there and do it again. And
yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot more ease. But I think a lot of it is just that we all spend so much time in studios. Like Al mostly is mixing. Like he's mixing and mastering. That's his life now. That's primarily what he's doing. So I think, he's just listening constantly to tons of different kinds of music. And so just that exposure, like me, I'm down here just trying to like write stuff or, constantly. And Kras is the same thing. Like he's producing people, working with people, writing, doing shows. I don't know. I think the goal is just to make good songs now versus playing songs. I think there's a difference, right?
No, there absolutely is a difference. And I mean, that maturity we've just talked about, comes from, by definition, many, many years of recording, playing, and so on. So I do want to sort of dive back to the other end of the spectrum and tell us about your musical upbringing. So what kicked you off on this amazing journey of yours?
Alan and I, in our house, there were drums. Like we both grew up playing drums. My dad was like a hobby drummer, so there was this incredible like '60s Gretsch kit in the place. And then one year we went to my grandmother's house, my mother's mother, and so like I'm half Polish, so this was like my Polish grandmother, right? So we go over to her house and into her basement, and in this basement was pristine. And then there was this back door that I'd never gone into in my life. And she just opens it up and opens up literally a trap case. And that was probably the first time I've actually seen what a trap case was. And this case was probably from the 40s, I think. This huge case, she opens it up and it's just, but in the room, there was like a old WFL drum set, which she gave to me. And I think that's probably just because I don't know how that happened, but that was given to me because basically at that point, Alan was like playing drums and like the Gretsch was kind of his, So then this kit gets brought into the basement. And so on one side is this WFL kit that I had, this like real mother pearl shells on them. I mean, the thing was amazing. And then Al was on the Gretsch, but also like she gave us this Deegan marimba. And that was wild. Like the stamps on every key were like 1901, 1902, 1903. Like that was wild. And again, that thing is gone. And just all this old percussion, like these old Ludwig sleigh bells. I mean, they looked like they were from the 40s. Like they were amazing. So both grew up playing drums. And then there was this one day when we were young and I don't know how it came up, but my dad must have asked Alan, like Alan started taking drum lessons from this like percussionist in Buffalo, New York, where we were from. And so then my dad came to me, he said, do you want to like take lessons on any, and before he finished saying that, I'll never forget this, a piano popped in my head, like above my head. And it was just, and I said, piano. And I'll never forget the look on my dad's face because he kind of thought he was like, dude, this kid is crazy. Like, we didn't have a piano. Like, and where did that come from? And the only thing I can think about is up the block, my grandmother's brother lived. It was my Uncle Wallace and my Aunt Lillian Garden. And they had a piano in their house. So when I was a little kid, I used to kind of go over there. Like every once in a while, I'd run up the street, say, hey, and I'd go in there. And there was this one day I remember I went in there and I went in and I was, I was just tall enough so that I remember being able to see the keys. And I remember I hit one key and it was like a bolt of lightning went through my body. And I'll never forget that. And I just remember standing there and it was literally like this light and like, it was like a bolt of lightning came right down when I hit that key. And it wasn't until like years later that I thought about that I remembered that. So it's strange because I have no idea what would ever make me choose the piano.
Yeah.
I really don't.
And so it sounded like you got those lessons, Neal. Like what was your progression through school, and so on, as far as getting educated with music?
So my dad's brother, my uncle Irvin, started me off on piano, and he was like in the 60s, and he was down here in New York City, and he was like a big band arranger. Like he used to live, his neighbor was Sonny Rollins at one time. Yeah, so I guess he used to kind of hang around those cats, but it was wild because my first lesson, he opened up just a big band score. Just it went all across the piano and he just started playing. And he had these massive hands. Like his hands were literally like twice the size of mine. Like so. And so he just started playing, like comping the chords. And he would say something like, I'll never forget, he'd be like, you got that? He's like, you got that? It was something like that he would just say. And I just say, yeah. And he'd say, okay. And then I would just kind of play it back. Couldn't read music. So that's kind of how I started playing piano. And basically, I had that one lesson where I touched the piano, and my next lesson, he came over the following week with this calligraphy set, blank sheet paper. And I had to write out, I had to make staff paper. So he brought like rulers, technical pen, and such a nerd. Like I was all about it when I was a kid. I love pens. I'm to this day, like, I have like all my like pens and, all these technical, but I perfectly wrote out 5 staffs and boom, did all the staffs on, and then I had to learn penmanship.
Wow.
Which was great because, yeah, I was like a little OCD when I was a kid. So I got nerded out on penmanship and all this crazy stuff like that. And that was my second lesson. And then after that, I don't think I got to touch a piano it was a while before I got to touch a piano again. And I remember that even that first day, the first song I got to play that he showed me was Ladybird. Yeah. And then I don't think I got to touch a piano for like a month after that. And then I remember one of the first lessons he was just like, "Where's middle C?" And I just went, "Duh," and I got it right. So I don't know what that meant. I passed.
That's amazing.
But so I studied with my uncle for years, and it was hard, just being a young kid. I think I started when I was 8. So I remember by the time I was 10, there would be like those, Saturday morning, you'd look outside, your friends were running outside. And I remember like around 10, I kind of stopped, I just wanted to play. And when I started again, I think there was a certain point I said, I want to start playing piano again and taking lessons. And it was called the Community Music School in Buffalo, New York, when I started taking lessons there. And it was with this great pianist, Jim Beischlein. Really excellent. And it was right down my alley because I was just a huge Oscar Peterson fan. I couldn't play any of it, but like all of a sudden when you're in front of some pianist and he just starts busting out like Oscar stuff,
Yeah.
I was like, whoa. Yeah, he was a huge Oscar fan too. So I've studied with Jim throughout up until I basically graduated high school. And what it was basically like going there every week. And again, I was like, I just cheated so much because I really didn't I was just never a great sight reader. I could never sight read music. So like my week would be going through and like learning the song and the standards. It was just going through the real book standards, which was great because I think that I just learned so much just about the approach to like harmony mainly, like really harmony, man. Like he's just showed me so much about harmony. I just never had like the facility I just never heard music from soloing. And I think that came from drumming. Like when I sat down at a piano, this is always where the left-hand bass came from because I'd sit down at a piano and I was just hearing drums, like the rhythm, the bass, and then like the chords. Like I always heard music from harmony first and rhythm. And then, it was just later that I kind of developed like the, like really soloing and.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to talk about that in some detail, Neal. I can't wait as well. So, I mean, it sounds like throughout your whole high school career, you were doing lessons. So what was the sort of bridge from graduating high school to actually making a full-time living with this? And I'm obviously keen to talk about things like Moonboot, Love, and the lead up to Soulive.
Yeah.
But what was sort of the post-school time for you and how you got into it?
Well, even like I was gigging like at 12 years old, with Alan and Peter Prince, because who was from the band, like they were originally called The Groove with my man Josh Levitt. And then it was when Al graduated high school and they moved to New York City. They were still The Groove for a little bit, but then they changed the name to Moonboot Lover. But I was doing gigs with them, like literally going to bars at 12 years old. Alan he was 15. So like he would have the permit. So what was it? Like you could drive up to like 7:00 or something like that. So like my parents would like let us take the car. We would drive to the gigs because we weren't coming home from a gig till like, I remember the one New Year's, like we drove to the gig and then like we came home at like 6 a.m. Because there was a certain time where you could start to drive again in the morning. So like they would let him take the car. We would go do a gig. And by the time the gig was over, like Al could drive again. And yeah, and then throughout like high school, we were traveling, like they would just come and Pete would drive over. Because Pete, I remember that like there was that point like Pete was like 21 or something like that. And he's like 7. Yeah, I don't know. He's something like 8 years older than me, or maybe 9. You know, what I mean, it was just wild. Like, cause I was this little kid, and we would drive to like colleges across New York State and play for we were playing for graduate students. And I would go to these things. I was like 14, going up to girls like, "Hey, I'm 16." It was so bad. And I remember them just looking at me like, "Yeah, okay, kid."
And it does show the huge trust your parents placed in you both, because that is amazing. I mean that in the best term of it. Like, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, again, man, when we were growing, it was just different. Like, we're different than the kids, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but it was different. Like, my wife was just saying the other day, like, we were just watching some show and I saw kids on. I was like, we were outside. I was like, in the summer, like, I remember like when summer school would get out at 7 a.m., I was on my bike and I was gone. I was gone. I'd see the dew on the grass, and I remember that because it was cold. It was like you'd walk out and get your bike on. It was cold, and in the summer would come up in a cup, like it get warmer. But I was gone all day, all day.
That's right.
We just live. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, we got to live in a really cool time, And I actually think I just saw some article that was like, what is happening? Like, what is happening to like neighborhoods now? Like, so I don't know what it's like in Austria, but it's like it was just different. Like, there were no phones, or like all we did was we're outside, So my parents they were great parents. That's the number one thing. Like, that's where it starts, Like, sure, I was doing some knucklehead stuff, but like, nah, not really, because I knew I knew what would happen, right? So, yeah, they trusted us, and like, we were just responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I think back, I used to make more on some gigs when I was like 12 years old than I did when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And that was crazy to think about that. I'd come back after these shows at these colleges, and I'd have like $300 as like at like 12 and 13, 12 years old, It'd be like, yo. Yeah, so and then like I stopped playing with them throughout high school because I was, just in high school. And then Al left when I was after my second year in high school. Like, he was gone; he had graduated. So I just kind of stayed with playing with Jim, and then started playing with like some local musicians around town. My man Rashid Ibrahim, the great sax player. And we just kind of hung for years, like writing songs. And then I was going to go to Rutgers University to study at the Mason Gross School of Arts there, and with Kenny Barrett. And then I was all set to go. And during that summer, Al asked me to join Moonboot Lovers. So I deferred my admissions and just kind of went on the road and did that until 96. Then that ended. And then there was like a year that I was back in Buffalo. And then I actually ended up applying to one school to go there for music. And it was Manhattan School of Music. And I got in and I studied with Jackie Byard there. Yeah, that was incredible. And it was so cool because when I was there, like, Jason Moran had just graduated, but he would come in. And so I got to like hang with him, and he had studied with Jackie and Eric Lewis. Like, my goodness. Like, so he would bop in. Yeah, so there are always these musicians. So I did that for a year and a half, and then Alan was out on the West Coast with Carl Denson. And he got asked to do some shows, I think originally with Grey Boy All Stars, I believe.
Yeah.
Then Carl asked him to play with them. And so then Al became his drummer. And then it was kind of the same timing. Al was like, hey, he hit me up and he was like, dude, do you want to start a band, like kind of like an organ trio thing? And I kind of made the decision to do that and left Manhattan School of Music against the wishes of like the dean there. And there were like a bunch of people that were like, yo, we really wish you'd stay. And I made my decision. And then it was wild. It was my birthday that January. of 99, and we left Buffalo. We moved out and had this place in upstate New York that we already rented, so we were moving in. And then we were there for maybe a couple days, and I got a call from Jason Moran, and he told me that Jackie Byard had passed. So there was this definite closure.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I made the right decision.
And I'm fascinated, Neal. I mean, the fact that you did, how many years would you have been with Moonboot Lover doing tours and playing before you went back to the Manhattan School of Music?
So it was 2 years.
Yeah.
It was 2 years. So right out of my 94, I graduated high school, went on the road, and which was the same year we met Kraz.
And so I'm fascinated. I mean, that is your first real baptism, as in spite of you having already played for years throughout high school. That was your first sort of baptism as a professional musician. You obviously enjoyed those 2 years to still have the passion to sign up to do even more education at Manhattan. So what did you learn from those first couple of years that still kept the passion for you and made you want to learn even more?
Again, I also think it was a different time.
Yeah.
Too, right? This was a time when people went out and supported live music. And that even started earlier, say back when I was like the late 80s, like when I was playing in the early 90s, like there were just people and musicians in Buffalo that we knew that had house, family, like kids, the kids were sending it, and they were just a musician that played at bars and they taught, or maybe they taught it, like it was just, you could have like, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a plumber? Do you want to be a teacher? Do you want to go into business? Do you want to own a business? You want to be a musician? It was like,
that's right.
Like there was like this level playing field, and that was the same thing when we like playing with Moonboot at that time, Like, listen, man, we struggled we were running a business, like we all lived in a house and we toured, and it's like, we had a house, food was paid for, then we had food, but sometimes it wasn't, depending on, it was great. I remember if you don't know what it's like to eat like literally have a mustard sandwich because those were the only two things in the cupboard. Like, I don't know, man. I'm a tough person, but like you just have to have that in order to, there's something you have to have. Like when you just say, like, you don't know what's going to happen. There's no cell phone. Like it was like driving across the country and you're driving across, stopping at a payphone and telling the cat like, we're 6 hours away. There's a snowstorm, but like, we think we're going to make this show. And it's like, if you didn't make the next show, that was gas money. And that was like your hotel money in order to get to the next gig, to make it to the next show so you could sell some tapes or whatever you were, and like whatever merchandise you had. Some people are like, I was just built for it, and a lot of people aren't. A lot of people aren't. Because it's not like I'm the greatest musician in the world and like, it's like, this is some genius and like that I could just get by on that. It was just like I've gotten better just from doing it over the years, and there was some reason why people would just pay to come see you play, So I think there's that. Like I enjoyed it also. Like I enjoyed like some people don't have that thing. Like there is nothing. I'm never nervous when I get on the stage. When I walk on stage, I'm gonna light it up. Like that's there's just like one goal, and that honestly comes back from like early. Like I grew up listening to like hip hop and stuff, and it's like MC. What is MC? It's like microphone control. It means move the crowd. It's like move the crowd, and MC moves the crowd, and like so that's a big part of it too. Like,
absolutely, and the resilience you're talking about there, as you said, is something you can only learn through experience. But then moving and sort of, co-founding to a large extent what became Soulive, you're essentially starting again. Sure, you've got great reputation and credibility in some spheres, but what was the sort of process of building that up from the start again?
Well, it was Al's idea. So he calls me up. And originally we had this, I was at Manhattan School of Music. And so there's an incredible vibraphonist, Nick Mancini, who is now based out of LA. Phenomenal. Like listening to, I mean, he has his own voice, but when he was at Manhattan School Music, it was Milt Jackson. Like, I mean, just incredible vibraphonist. So we kind of kicked it with Nick, and he was like on board, and he was finishing his master's. We had this place in upstate New York, and he would kind of come up there, and we actually cut the original, like the first demo. I actually think we might have put out a version, and that was what was our first album?
Get Down.
Get Down. And I think there's some anniversary one that came out, and Alan might have put on the original recording with Nick on it. I think the three of us cutting us. I think
there was a remaster issued. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think there might be a version of one of the tracks with Nick on there, possibly. So Nick was on board, but then we booked this first show in Boston at, was it called? Was it Baby Girl? It was something like that. It was like this art studio, and it was all set up. It was something like that. But in between like our last rehearsal and this first gig, he was kind of like, I can't do this. Like, and we were like, okay, so we're basically on our drive to the gig. And at some point, Alan hit Kraz up, because Kraz was in Boston at the time. And he was like, yo, come down to, I think it was called Baby Girl Studios. It was something like that. And he was like, yo, come down here. Like, Nick's going to be, but just like, yo, sit in. And it was like the moment we had Kraz come up. And I could see Kraz in the back of the room, when he came up. And I think we did like Fire Eater and like these Boogaloo tunes. We did some, and boy, we were all on stage like, yow, like just bugging out. And I even as Kraz, like from that point, Kraz was like, yo, these dudes, like, because again, we had just known each other since we graduated high school in '94 when Moonboot was touring, because like we would come into town and then all the Lettuce guys would come out and see us play. So, and that was it. And then basically a couple weeks after that, so that show might have been in January or February. Like it was right around the end of January, February. And then like the next thing was Kraz came down on March. Maybe Kraz came down on the 1st. And then the 2nd is when we recorded Get Down. And that was it. The 2nd and 3rd, we cut Get Down.
It sounds like, Neal, you knew from, those first times sort of jamming together, it sounded like you knew it was coming together as something a bit special.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I'm telling you, the moment he stepped on stage, it was over. It was like, yep. And I don't even know if at that time we were like, it wasn't like he was coming there like, yo, I'm going to do this. It was more like, yo, just come down here and play. But it just felt right. It just felt right. And so when we started this, one of the cool things was because of our reputation with Moonboot Lover, we just had so many friends, owners of venues around the country. One, our dear friend Paul up at Stone Church in New Hampshire. And also like the Fox Theater in Boulder, Colorado. Like we just had some friends that were like, hey, whenever you guys, like, doesn't matter what you guys do, just give us a buzz. So it was kind of nuts because we were doing like, we would get gigs like a Friday night in a college town, and coming out packed, or we'd go out to the Fox Theater, and some of the first shows we were opening up for like some of the biggest touring bands in the country, and we were opening up on a Friday and like a Saturday night. Yeah, just amazing. Again, it was a different time, but like just really great friends that we've just made over the years that were just like supportive of the community of music, and musicians. And
yeah. And that community is so important. And as you've already mentioned, Neal, times have changed, but that community of musicians is so critical. And I mean, I know Soulive, there's this sort of parallel, it's not parallel probably as such, but there's this river of music with you guys and Lettuce, and you've mentioned the involvement there. And we've had the pleasure of having Nigel on the show before as well. Just tell us about, I probably want to also preface that with, he obviously was in awe of of you, Neal, and basically made some comment along the lines of, I don't know how he does what he does. But yeah, just tell us about that community and how that was supportive through those years before we get on to some of the more specific stuff.
Nigel's really modest because, like, listen, you know how bad Nigel's incredible. But it's kind of funny because literally, like, we had for years, because Nigel was way up in Bangor, Maine, like, which is in the middle of nowhere, way up at it's just bears, snow and bears. And, but so I've been hearing about Nigel for years, and we would go into Boston and just, we were just, Boston was one of our hubs for years. And this one year, everyone was like, yo, Nigel's going to come down tonight. And so, like, and it's kind of wild, like, people got to see Nigel for the first time because he came on stage with us at the Paradise in Boston. And I know he remembers that show. And it's just so cool that so many of like our friends that like we got, and it's even wild, like even Lettuce, like people knew about Lettuce if you were up in the Northeast around Boston and stuff, but like Lettuce was never a touring band. The first time Lettuce went on tour as a touring band was opening for Soulive.
Yeah.
And it's kind of wild, it's just wild because Lettuce didn't like take off because like Dites got asked to play with the Average White Band for years. So like when we started Soulive, like he got this gig to play with the Average White Band and got his first drum set because Dice never had a drum set before. That's the baddest drummer on the planet. He didn't have his own drum set, he had a drum set. And then from there he was like playing with Schofield and all the other musicians were, Zoidus, the Rustic Overtones. And just everyone who was doing great stuff. Like Edie's out producing in LA and doing stuff with Dr. Dre and, but the timing just happened when Lettuce was like going to do that kind of thing. And then it was just like, we were like touring and it just made sense. Like, yo, but Nigel's incredible.
Yeah, he is. And I had the pleasure of seeing him live a few months ago. And yeah, incredible gig. So no, that's great. Thank you. And you also mentioned the Grey Boy All-Stars. Are they someone you've come across over the years? Because again, we had the pleasure of having Robert Walter on probably over a year ago, but another amazing outfit.
Love Robert. My goodness.
Yeah, it's a great community. So I do want to dig down into your amazing output with Soulive, and then we've got some other stuff to talk about as well. But let's just talk a bit about your playing. And so in the early days of Soulive, and I'd argue up until this day, you were creating your bass lines on the Hammond B3. Do you still primarily rely on the B3 for the bass parts, or are you using other keyboards and synthesizers to accentuate that as well?
Let's see how long I played bass on the Hammond. I had this chopped A100 that was really cool because the bass pedals were actually wired into the first drawbars. So, or no, were they? Or did I have it on the whatever it was? They were in the first drawbar. No, I pulled them down, but they were in the manuals. They were wired into the manuals. So that was kind of wild about my Hammond because people were like, yo, where are you getting that low end from? Because literally when we started playing with Soulive, I sat on a JBL 18. That was my seat. And man, the bass was just thunderous coming out of that. So I did that for a while. And then for years, the first keyboard I had was a Roland. Actually, is what I have right here. The Roland. Or did I have this first? No, I think the first one I had was a Roland A33.
Yeah, nice. Yep.
And they're like, man, if you find them, they're like, maybe you can find it for like maybe $200.
Because they're a plastic controller, aren't they? I think I owned one. I owned one at one stage.
Best MIDI controllers. So there's the first one was the A30, which this is my favorite controller. If you can get your hands on this, and I have like a few of them, and I know Al has one, and I have just some that got beat up over the years, and I probably should just find another one. Best controller, and it's like a semi-weighted. Like I can't play weighted. I just don't have piano hands anymore. So, someday like I'm going to get a piano so I can sit at it. So it's always tough. But then keyboard piano weighting it's not a piano. And so they're all over the place and my hands aren't just strong enough. And just to do what I want to do on bass, to sound like a bass player. You can't do it with weighted keys. It's the sensitivities out there. And also the sensitivity on this feels like a Hammond, which is really specific. And the clap, even though a clap is like a hair lighter, it's the same. It's a very similar thing. And like all those things throw me off. Like if going from one, if like weighting is different. But yeah, kind of. So early on, I started using that. And I remember I had a Roland XV. So mad because Roland actually makes the plugins now for it, even the expansion cards. And I'll listen back to live. I've heard some stuff at live shows, and I'm going like, oh my, it's like it's just some of the best bass and recorded that on albums. And then, I don't know, at some point, like the computer came out and I started, and I think from the beginning I was using Trilian. Like ED told me about that. So like, because he knew, like, ED be like, Neal, you got to check out Trilian, because he knew the Spectrasonics cats, and so yeah, ED told me about Trilian, and that's what I've used ever since.
Okay.
And then only the controllers changed because I was using the A33, then the A37, and then when I found this A30, it just blows them both away.
And so that's what you still use now, the A30, because it's a great keyboard.
A30, yeah. If we're doing live shows, I have my A30. It's so hard to backline those. So backlining, I found like the Nord. What is it? The Nord Stage 3.
Yeah.
Is that what? Yeah, like it has a good feel. Only thing that drives me nuts about the Nord's like it. But I've kind of ironed it out. But if the MIDI is not working, Break Science, Adam Deitz's a project with Borum Lee. Break Science.
I don't. No.
Oh man, you gotta check them out.
Okay.
It's incredible. Like it's just the two of them. It's like Borum on keys, laptop, and wizardry, and then Deitch on drums. But like Borum, like knew, so there were so many gigs. It would be the craziest thing. We'd on stage at like some big outdoor show, and I can't get this thing to work. And also Borum was like, happened to be at that festival. Like Deitch and him were playing at the festival. Borum would walk on stage and just go, do. And then it was all working. And that's one thing that kind of drives me nuts about, like, Nords actually sound amazing. And like recently I've been in the studio and I'm kind of like blown away. Like the sounds are really awesome, man. Actually, when we were in Iceland, we stopped at this music store, and I know there's some new Nord that's out now, and it looked like it was, I don't know what it was, but it felt great, like it was weighted, and like it was really great. I actually used one in the studio as well, what they had. But so the Nord 3, because it like that's not knowing that I can get that backlined. That's
your go-to,
kind of what I'll use on stage. But everything is just is Trilian, and it's like it's just a bass sound in there. It's like whether it's called like 60s bass, but it like just kind of sounds like flat wounds,
Yeah.
There's sustain, but it's like punchy, like where it's almost muted, but like.
And so
I just want to sound like, I just want there to be a bass player on stage, and that's something that I've just worked at for years. It comes naturally, but yeah.